I never thought I'd be writing something like this. As the CEO of a mid-sized tech firm, my life has always been under a microscope. Company PR, board of directors, investors. So when I say I'm about to tell the story of how I, 42M, fell in love with someone I absolutely shouldn't have, you can probably guess how surreal this is. Think of it like one of those long Reddit confession threads. A bit messy, painfully honest, but with a happy ending that even I had trouble believing. I'll start with a little background. Every workday for me begins at 6 a.m. sharp. I have an alarm, a quick coffee, and then I'm out the door for a 5-mile run. It keeps me sane. I get to listen to the morning news and think through my day before the chaos starts. By 7:30, I'm in my car, and my executive assistant has already rounded up my daily schedule. Usually board calls, department reviews, and a long breakfast meeting or two. The Harvard study my EA quoted last year wasn't wrong. I average roughly 10 hours a day at work, and on most weekends I still chip away at strategy. One secret I share with a lot of CEOs is that we often quietly work Sundays. It's our personal deep dive day to stay ahead of the curve. Our company is big into transparency and ethics. I've been through the corporate training sessions half a dozen times. If you date a coworker, tell HR, it goes. Never date a subordinate. But the rules, the fine print, don't exactly grab headlines in a CEO's world until you're caught breaking them. So how did I find myself skirting around those rules? Let me rewind to January this year. Our company hosted an industry gala. You know, the type where I smile for cameras and pretend I don't wake up at night worried about the stock price. I was there to make a keynote speech about our new product roadmap. Afterward, at a business dinner, I met her. Her name's Lee. All names change for privacy. Lan is a consultant who works with our sector, sometimes even as a consultant to our company. We got introduced by a mutual friend, and from the first handshake, I was smitten. Quick wit, eyes that actually study me instead of glazing over, and this laugh that made the board meeting blather from earlier in the day evaporate. Over appetizers and wine, we talked marketing strategies and science fiction books. It felt like 45 minutes had passed when I realized we'd solved all the world's problems and planned half a new startup in a single sitting. In my head, the alarm bells were, well, quietly ringing. She was in the same industry, let's just say on a competing side. And I'm a CEO, yet it didn't stop there. We had dinner next week, then drinks at a bar on a Friday night after our offices, late emails on Saturday. Each meeting was passed off to board members and spouses as industry dinner or networking, but I knew better. The last thing I needed was an HR department digging through credit card receipts and email logs. Here's how I justified it to myself at the time. She's not my subordinate. She's an outside consultant. We're both adults, professional adults. In my heart, I thought it was just private happiness, no one's business but ours. But I also knew that if anyone at the company found out, my career was toast. Remember Easterbrook, the McDonald's CEO? He got fired in 2019 for an affair. Well, after he had done wonders for their profits. If he couldn't get a pass, what about me? And sure enough, the higher the stakes, the harder it is to keep quiet. I'll be honest, there were moments when I convinced myself it wasn't really a big deal. My family could meet her someday, I reasoned. But the more time we spent together, the deeper I fell. She had this favorite cafe downtown we'd slip into after late board dinners. We talked for hours, genuine, whole hours, about childhood dreams, tech trends, the absurdities of corporate life, until closing time. I knew none of this fit the script, but I also never felt this calm and alive. It terrified and thrilled me. Meanwhile, life around me was business as usual. I had board meetings, investor calls, quarterly earnings reports. The Harvard study of CEOs noted that only 11% of our time is routine duties, like board reviews, but they can loom large. I couldn't afford to slip up. Every day I told myself, be careful, keep this private. A crucial turning point was at the end of March. We were on a weekend trip to a tech conference in Austin, conference funded by the company. Lee was there to speak, so we ended up sharing a hotel. I remember the moment vividly. I had a conference dinner in our hotel ballroom with a dozen other CEOs. The lights were low, chattering was loud, and I was nodding along while others pitched their visions. Suddenly, mid-sentence, I saw Lee walk into the ballroom to meet a colleague. In that split second, my heart nearly stopped. We locked eyes across the room. She gave me a nervous half smile and slipped back out. My stomach turned. Here we were, supposed to be incognito in front of other suits, but there she was, standing out like a flame. In that instant, I realized this has to stay secret or everything falls apart. I fumbled through the rest of that dinner, barely picking at the food. When it ended, I found an excuse to exit the room early in pretext to make a call about the quarterly reports. The real call was to check on Lee's room number. Later that night, I snuck back into our suite past midnight so the housekeeper wouldn't notice. When she opened the door, I grinned sheepishly. Technical difficulty, I joked. We collapsed on the couch laughing, but I felt like we were one mistake away from catastrophe. After that, I made a promise to myself. Be more cautious. No more late night texts. Hide our meetups under official events. But as any story like this goes, caution is easy to talk about and harder to live by. A few days later, back in our city, I was in my office late after everyone left. I happened to glance at my email and saw a message from HR, the same one who once lectured me on travel reimbursements. It was about updating our HR compliance forms, including a checkbox saying, any personal relationships that could create a conflict of interest? My heart sank. This is exactly the stuff you're supposed to check if you're an executive in love with someone in the business. I nervously skimmed the form and immediately minimized it. I convinced myself that since Lee wasn't technically on our payroll, she's an external consultant, maybe it didn't apply, but that's just rationalizing. Part of me thought maybe I should click it and be honest. Deep down, I feared that if I did, I'd trigger a meeting with the board chairman or HR head. They'd grill me like I was hiding something, and I'd have to weigh out loud whether this person was worth my career. The answer is yes, but saying that under oath? So I did nothing. I told myself I'd figure out a way to make it right if it ever came to it. In mid-April, things came to a head. We had a board retreat at a country club, all executives and board members, families included. My wife was there. We've been separated for nearly 2 years. Nobody quite on the same page, but not divorced, which made this even messier. Lee wasn't officially on the invite, but she was our errand runner there, picking up some branded swag for clients on our behalf. Tension buzzed around me like static. My parents had come to visit, expecting me to introduce them to the new board president. I'd just taken over last year, remember? It was a big deal for our family. At the welcome dinner on Saturday night, my dad gave a little toast. He said, I'm proud to see our family's tradition continue, Jimma leading the charge like his great-grandfather did. It was awkward pride. I scanned the room. My assistant was nearby, scribbling notes. My tech team was doing a test of the stage. And behind them, Lee charming some of the marketing folks. I turned back to Dad and smiled politely. The pressure was immense. Family expectation, boardroom scrutiny, and my secret hanging there. That night, after dinner, I stole a moment away from the crowd and found Lee by the lake. We had planted trees there as part of a team-building exercise. I sat down beside her in the shadow. She took my hand. "What did you think of my speech, Mr. CEO?" She teased softly. I managed a laugh. "You nailed it. I think the only person as nervous as me was the guy who had to hug the hedge." She blinked in the dim light. "Is it worth it, sneaking around like this?" Her question broke my heart. She knew. How could she not? But I wanted to pretend ignorance for just a bit longer. "It's complicated," I whispered, heart pounding. I wanted to say yes 1,000,000 times. Yes, it's worth it. But I also knew what it meant. Then my phone vibrated. A message. I tried to ignore it, but it was from our CFO. "Can we talk?" "Now." 3 a.m.? Something was very wrong. I squeezed Leah's hand. "I have to go. Something's up." Without waiting for her answer, I dashed through the dark toward my car, adrenaline kicking in. In the parking lot, I called the CFO on speakerphone. He was clipped. "John, something's come up. Peter. I think Peter saw something suspicious at dinner." Peter was our COO and a board member. My stomach turned. He was grill master at those country club buffets and always noticed details. "What happened?" I snapped quietly. "It's about yesterday's meeting. Peter recognized you from across the room with..." "Who? Who was that woman?" "He's asking questions." My mind raced. I knew what he meant. In that hotel ballroom, I watched Lee walk in for a minute of all business, and then slip out. I never introduced her. If Peter mentioned her, our cover was blown. I stammered, trying to sound casual. "That was a client's rep. They came in late." He said nothing. I could hear Peter in the background asking, "So how do you know her? You said it was all business?" I could not let that sit. "Look," I said firmly, "if anyone says anything, just tell them she's an industry consultant working with another startup. Nothing to worry about." "That won't fly, John. If the board gets wind of this, we'll have to follow corporate policy. You know what that means." "You mean my HR file and endless meetings?" "I'm aware." I snapped back. It dawned on me how truly fucked I was. CEO or not, I couldn't sign anything in ink about this. They'd probably fire me on the spot for breaching conflict of interest. I ended the call and tried to steady my breathing. Then I realized, in avoiding talking to my lover, I was throwing her under the bus. This was on me. She waited with me at the hotel entrance as I rushed out. I hadn't even said goodbye. I called her phone. 1 ring, 2. "Hey!" I breathed into the darkness. "Are you okay? You sounded panicked." "Peter knows. They're on to me, Nick. I don't know what to say." There was a pause. Then her voice calm and clear. "We have to tell them. I'm tired of hiding." I caught the defiance. "What?" "No, Lee. I can handle this." "No," she said firmly. "You think I want this either? If we keep lying, it'll only get worse. I'll back you up, whatever they throw at us. But you have to stand with me and just say it." My heart sank. Confrontation time. The next morning, I walked into the boardroom early. Reporters were outside. I had insisted on a media blackout last night, claiming it was a rough travel issue. In the empty room, I found my general counsel and the VP of HR prepped at the head table. On the polished wood sat a glass of water that hadn't been there the night before. As the rest of the board filed in, I knew I'd have to face them. 2 chairmen, the board secretary, my COO, and half a dozen directors. And in the corner was Lee, standing with my father and stepmother. I couldn't believe my dad had agreed to come in on such short notice, but here he was, looking as worried as I felt. I stood and introduced the meeting. Just for a moment, everything was normal. Then the chairman said, "Before we start, I understand some personal matters came to light last night. Silence. My pulse hammered in my ears. This was it. Clearing my throat, I said, "Yes, Mr. Chairman, board members. I have something I need to clear up. The woman you saw me speaking with last night is someone very special to me. She's not a consultant or client. She's someone I care deeply about." Half the table gasped quietly. I saw a couple of board members stiffen. My father in the corner swallowed. Lee took a slow step forward. "I'm sorry I had to come in like this," she said softly, her voice shaking. "We know this looks bad, but John and I have been seeing each other privately." I took a breath. The CFO's and legal counsel's faces were blank. The policy was on the table like a guillotine blade. "What is your position with the company?" the chairman asked measuredly. "She's not an employee," I blurted, voicing what I'd convinced myself earlier. "She works at another firm." "And you're the CEO," he continued. "So this doesn't trigger a disclosure by policy?" I realized a moment too late that I was still lying. She was at one point doing some contract work for us. Trivial stuff, yes, but still a tie. Lee spoke up, surprising me. "I've done a one-off project with the company, yes, but it was several years ago and I reported it then. Right, John?" I nodded, the lie feeling empty. The chairman turned to HR. "We need to review our conflict of interest and personal relationship policy," he said. "There's clearly some overlap here. We will handle this by the book." I felt my skin crawl. I was about to be the example of that policy. The room had turned chilly. A couple of directors were exchanging looks. My stepmother gave me a fearful smile from the corner. The next few minutes were a blur of formalities. I apologized for not disclosing our involvement. We sat through a lecture on ethical duty. Lee apologized too, gracefully, honestly, taking responsibility as well. No one said it out loud, but I knew the unspoken. If the board wanted a scapegoat, either one of us could be it. The policy required at least that I step down from oversight or temporarily recuse myself. Likely, I'd have to announce the relationship publicly under HR rules. For the first time, I pictured my life headline: "Tech CEO resigns after romance scandal." But then something unexpected happened. The chairman said quietly, "We trust you're coming forward in good faith, John. We don't want to ruin your career over a personal matter, especially one handled transparently now. You've already come to us." My heart skipped. Trust? Possibly surprisingly, the board did trust my word. He announced a brief recess to confer privately. I felt the eyes of the room on me as the tension mounted. In the hallway, Dad appeared. He looked torn. "Son," he started, but I shook my head. "Dad, not now," I whispered. Just then, the COO joined us. He cleared his throat. "Your integrity was important to you, wasn't it?" he said quietly. "You own up to mistakes. That counts for something." I braced myself, waiting for the hammer to fall. Instead, he turned back into the room and said, "Let's proceed, everyone." We resumed. And it was like a miracle. The chairman told everyone that in light of John's openness and the personal nature of the situation, they would handle it as a managed conflict. The exact terms were still pending, but he said this would involve strict transparency going forward. Probably an amendment to our compliance agreement, but not an outright firing. Lee and I glanced at each other. We had basically confessed an affair to our most powerful overlords and survived. We didn't fully realize yet that this would change our entire dynamic with the company. After the meeting, I escorted Lee out of the building. The city evening was warm. I just stood there, startled that the world hadn't ended. Lee looked up at me. "I thought we were done for," she said. exhaling a laugh that turned into a small cry. We nearly were, I admitted, pulling her close. I was ready to lose it all. She stared into my eyes. But you didn't, she said. You owned it. That was brave. I felt my cheeks burn. Brave? I felt like anything but. I had you, I murmured. I'm not going anywhere, she promised. And in that moment, I believed it completely. Over the next few weeks, things smoothed out oddly quickly. Perhaps management saw that a harsh line would damage company morale. Instead, I was put on a personal probation of sorts. I had to submit weekly updates to HR about project conflicts, and I agreed to personally fund independent audits of any contract involving Lee's firm. It felt ridiculous, but it was my choice to make amends. The board quietly congratulated themselves for handling a potential crisis without bloodshed. Most importantly, I learned something. If I felt this hard for someone, I was willing to fight for it. And Lee was too. On the day I signed our new compliance agreement, I kept her hand under the table. We'd walked through fire together. Over the summer, family tensions resolved too. My parents, after some initial stunned silence, took to her quite naturally. It turned out Lee knew my big sister growing up, which gave them common ground. My father once said to me over dinner sheepishly, I see what he saw. Our families all discovered mutual friends in that crazy small corporate world way, and soon those worries about fit seemed silly. Update, February 2026. It's been 6 months since our little confession drama. Today, Lee and I are engaged. Yes, engaged. We announced it at New Year's after quietly telling our closest friends and family. I joked on LinkedIn that we had some extraordinary shareholder value in our personal lives. The press had a field day at first, but then quickly pivoted to our growth story. They love a happy ending. Life is good. I still lead the company. We instituted a new personal relationship policy that's surprisingly fair to all employees. And Lee now runs her own consultancy with full transparency. Every morning after my run, I text her coffee orders before my first board call, and sometimes I sneak her into my calendar as meeting with special advisor. We laugh about all this, but mostly feel grateful. We got lucky and learned that honesty, no matter how terrifying at first, was really the only way forward. Thanks for reading, everyone. I never thought I'd have a story like this, but here we are. CEO, nerd, and genuinely happy.